Today we're going to make chicken tetrazzini. We're going to show you how to not only prepare the meal, but really go through some food safety tips as well, especially when we're dealing with things like raw meat, raw chicken, and things to that nature. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to use, I'll show you some of the tools that we're going to use. I will go through all of the ingredients and we're going to make a great meal. One of the things that we love about this meal is that you can improvise. So you could use raw chicken and cook it on your own and brown it, and I'm going to show you that because that's what I like to do, so we're going to do that today. But you can also, to save some time, you can use cooked chicken or you can get a rotisserie chicken as well. Not only will that just save you a little bit of time, but in some cases it might even save you a little bit of money as well. What else is really great about this meal as far as improvisation goes is that, for example, I use, for a little bit of a salt kick, I'll use some capers, right, just to add it to the mixture. And you don't have to do that. I don't think it takes away from the meal. You can always add a little bit of salt. But one of the most important things to do as you navigate through and kind of decide what you want to add or what you might want to omit is to taste. So always taste your meal as you go along. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you before we get into the chicken and dredging the chicken into flour is I want to show you some of the tools that we're going to be using today and some of the things that you might need. So some of the things that you might need, you're going to need measuring cups. Now these measuring cups are for our dry ingredients like our flour. Okay, now the other measuring cup I have here is for our wet ingredients, and we're going to be using milk, actually 3.5 cups of milk, and we'll be using a cup of heavy cream as well. So when you have wet ingredients, you want to make sure you're using a measuring cup that looks like this. Okay. Also, we're going to be using some measuring spoons. Now you'll see that in the recipe, when we actually link you over to the website that shows the full recipe, there are measurements there where you can use the measuring spoons. As you see, as I go through, I might put a dash of this and a dash of that, and I might eyeball some of it. But again, it goes back to tasting it, and if you needed to add a little bit more salt or pepper, don't be afraid to do so. We're also going to use a couple of different pans. Luckily, at the end, this comes out to be one great comfort food meal into one big pan. So this is a 13 by 9 inch pan that I have, you see I've already basted, so I sprayed it with our non-stick cooking spray for you already. So we'll be using that a little bit later when we're finished the meal before it goes right in the oven. So we're going to put that over there. Okay. We're also going to use, I have a 5-quart, I have a pan here that we're going to use. I like these. I like to use the one without the long handle, but it really doesn't matter. Whichever one you have, I found that because the sides of this is a little higher, and we're going to be putting, we're going to cook the chicken in here first. And the great thing about this, and it really adds a lot of flavor, is that we're going to cook the mushrooms and all of the rest of the ingredients in this same pan. So we're going to take all of that goodness from the crispy chicken, and it's going to blend in with the mushroom mixture and all of the other ingredients really well. Okay. Now the other thing that we're going to use is we're going to use, this is also about a 5-quart saucepan to cook the spaghetti. Now you can use thin spaghetti, and that's actually what I'm going to be using. Okay, I'm going to be using about half a box of this, all right? So it's about 1/2 pound of spaghetti. You can use, feel free to use fettuccine or any other type of noodle you wish. I prefer the spaghetti because you'll see once the dish is done that it mixes very well, and when you use your spoon or your fork to pick up the bite, it comes out to one nice bite. But again, we're looking to save time sometimes, maybe we're looking to save some money, and all you have on hand is another type of pasta. It's definitely not going to take away from the flavor. All right, so what we're going to do is I have my chicken here, and you can see I have 3 chicken breasts here on a cutting board. Now one of the things I want to mention about the use of chicken, and this is a little bit about the food safety that I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago. I always, when I'm cutting meat or dealing with raw meat products, I always use the same cutting board. I make sure that it's thoroughly washed before or after, and I never cut any of the other ingredients on this cutting board for fear of, we don't want to contaminate any of the other ingredients with the raw chicken, right? The bacteria that could be in raw chicken. Right. Another thing when you think of food safety, you want to make sure some things that maybe you won't think about. Like, for example, if you have really long hair, it's pulled back and it's not at risk of being in your food, because who would want a meal that finds hair in it? I know for me, that would ruin my whole dish. And then the other thing, which I found interesting, and this was something that I used to do all the time, and I recently watched a video about washing your chicken before using it. And scientific studies have shown, and there's actually a video on it, that washing your chicken could potentially contaminate the kitchen, the sink, you, and the bacteria that's on uncooked chicken could get everywhere. So we want to avoid rinsing your chicken as well before preparing it. All right, so let's get started. So what we're gonna do first is, if you see here, I have two flat pie pans. Now, pie trays here, or pie dishes. Now, you can use anything you want. You can use paper plates, but what I do is I'm gonna dredge the chicken first before I cook it, okay? So we're gonna take a little bit of flour and just pour it in there, okay? I'm just kinda gonna spread it out there. We'll add a little bit more. Let's see. Don't be afraid. If you think that there's not enough, put more, right? Okay, then we're gonna season the flour a little bit. So I'm gonna add a few turns of the pepper mill here. Just kind of season that up. Okay, and let's add a little bit of salt. Okay, just to give it a little bit of flavor. Just kind of mix that in there. Okay, so this pie plate here, what I'm gonna do is, after I dredge my chicken, and what I mean by that is I'm gonna lightly coat each side of chicken with flour, and I'm gonna place it into the other dish before I move over to the oven or to the stove and I start browning my chicken. When you're ready to brown your chicken, we're gonna cook it about, so to make sure it's cooked through, we're gonna cook it about 5 to 6 minutes on each side. So when you dredge your chicken, you wanna shake off any excess flour, but you wanna make sure you coat it pretty well, because we wanna make sure that we get a good brown coating on there when we're frying it up. Okay, we wanna just shake off any excess, right? So we don't have any lumps, right? We're just gonna place that in there. And of course, we'll go back to food safety. You can see that I'm handling the chicken here. So after we get these into the pie plates, we're going to wash our hands thoroughly. I find, especially when I'm working with chicken, or any type of raw meat really, that I wash my hands quite often, and I think I go through an entire roll of paper towels drying them. So, okay, so we're going to do that. Okay, one more here. And then we are going to move this cutting board right into the sink and get it out of our way and make sure that we're not contaminating anything else. Okay. All right, so we've got our chicken ready to go into the pan. I am gonna wash my hands off here and wash our contaminated cutting board and everything else, and make sure we don't have anything anywhere. All right.